Decrepit Dinklecasters is a podcast which I am sure requires no introduction. It is a deeply personal podcast for me. I grew up listening to co-hosts Arthur and Anuhas Dinklecast all over each other. I have many fond memories of summer nights deciphering the cryptic puzzles that were the Dinklecasts. Episode 10, Adventures, is, as I will argue in this video, their most ambitious project yet, and their most important Dinklecast. It is a scathing critique of capitalism, a horrifyingly convincing portrayal of the descent into madness, and a magnificent story of prejudice and discrimination. The first 10 minutes of the episode are brain rot. 10 straight minutes of slogging through these two men talk to each other about nothing at all. Their words are like white noise. Listening to it, you can feel your brain numbing, and a sense of thick and viscous lethargy overtakes you as the sheer tedium and boredom of the meaningless tangent drills into your mind. This is not unintentional. The authors of the Dinklecast created this effect for the express purpose of putting you into the headspace of the inmate of a mental asylum. From the very beginning, madness infests the Dinklecast. One of the central premises of this Dinklecast is the fact that both co-hosts have an inexplicable hatred of people whose name starts with T. This is part of the reason I find this Dinklecast so personal to myself, of course, bearing this mark myself. Let me quickly show you how this theme is related to Marxism. The co-hosts, representations of the lower class, have uncritically accepted this prejudice that they have been fed by an external force that seeks to harm them. As you will come to see, this prejudice of theirs will bite them in the ass repeatedly, damning them again and again for their intolerance. And yet they never question it, because they have been convinced T-people are a threat, an outside group, untouchables. This is a direct allegory to the way that the ruling class divides the lower class in real life, by stirring up fear and hate along lines of identity among a class that should be united against their common enemy, the rich. Arthur and Anuhas truly are masters of social commentary. Mirroring the classical epic of the Odyssey, the co-hosts embark on a series of adventures together, each one emphasizing the themes of madness, horror, and class warfare. These adventures are more like dreams, surreal tales in which logic and causality does not exist. The narrative is fuzzy and non-linear, and listening to it truly does feel like you're operating at a lower level of consciousness. Anuhas will introduce the first adventure.
See, madness, as you know, is like gravity. All it takes is a little push.
So let me start. You are trapped in a jungle. You can't tell, but you feel like it is the African jungle because there's a lot of snakes, and snakes live in Africa. So you're in the African jungle, and it's just covered in bushes and trees and shit, and you don't know what to do or how you got here. But you think it's because you accidentally pissed off a wizard, which may or may not have teleported you to this place. I hate it when that happens.
The first lie of the Odyssey is the very framing of the narrative, presented like an improvisational role-playing game like D&D, in which all the freedom is given to Arthur, the player, and Anuhas, the DM, merely facilitates his actions to happen. In truth, nothing Arthur does actually matters. No matter what he does, he will always reach the same conclusion. He cannot succeed because the game was rigged from the start. The allegory to capitalism is obvious. It is presented as a meritocracy, in which one can succeed if they only try hard enough, or in reality, Arthur is just another rat in the race, part of the circle of ants where the only end is the one determined by above. Arthur's mission is to find a potion within a booby-trapped temple and give it to the sorceress who stuck him there in order to escape. He has a few friends to help him, but they don't stick around for very long, as Arthur kills them all in quick succession purely for the fact that their names all start with T. As I said earlier, these actions spurred on by blind prejudice will prove to be his downfall.
You give the monkey a banana, and then he's like, wow, thanks for the banana. He starts chewing on it, but then you realize that he's actually a banana, and he's eating a monkey. The monkey seems to be screaming in pain from being unpeeled. What do?
Dream logic and surreality pervades every corner of the Dinklecaster Odyssey. Clearly, Arthur has already been driven mad, as his perception of reality is already crumbling and melting around him.
You know what? But before walking inside, actually, no. I take Tobias, and I'm like, hey, you? I want you to walk in before me.
Tobias walks in. He is dead.
I'm like, yes, I knew that would happen. And then I go and I say, hey, Tony, why don't you walk in too?
Tony walks in. Tony is dead.
Now, how did they die?
Oh, they just like flop dead on the ground once they enter.
I pick up a rock and throw it in.
Rock has entered. Nothing much happens.
Okay. I pick up a rock. I pick up a sentient rock and then throw it in as it screams.
Rock has entered. Rock is dead.
The feeling of madness in this episode is so realistic, I actually laughed at this.
The sorcerer was actually Tylene all along. You have killed the sorcerer. Even if you return the sorcerer's potion, the sorcerer is dead.
The lower class had been kept from achieving freedom from this unreal hell by the very prejudices instilled in them by their prison wardens. Remember that prison metaphor for later.
I'm like, well, that was awkward, and then I wake up.
You wake up. You wake up. You're inside of you were inside of an ancient temple. You walk into the temple. You have died. You failed.
What? Okay, I restart then.
Okay, you restart. Tylene, Tobias, and Tony are still dead though, because you cannot bring back a human life. You are in the African jungle.
There is no freedom here, no escape from the dream, despite what the collaborative nature of the story may have led you to believe. And even despite starting again, Arthur cannot reverse the consequences of his actions.
Like, awkward crickets start cricketing around you.
Amazing line. The monotone deadpan voice of Anuhas only adds to the surreal horror of this episode. The inability to wake up, to escape from this dream, by Arthur is deeply unsettling, and I believe this is a direct allegory to the inability of the working class to escape capitalism. The rules of the dream are constantly shifting and changing.
You drink the potion speaks to you. It's like, nuh-uh, only people, disgusting people whose names start with T can drink this potion. Does your name start with a T, adventure?
No,
you have 5
it starts
seconds.
with an A.
Oh, that's cool. It allows it allows you to drink it. Finally, after drinking it and digesting down, you see your name, your birth certificate appear in front of you. It has your name, starting with A, but there's a magic pencil moving that you cannot control, and it is changing the first letter of your name. What do?
The genuine terror by which Arthur says "what" in that tiny voice as his birth certificate changes and he becomes the one thing he fears most of all. The scriptwriters and actors are truly geniuses. Arthur tries to grab the pencil, but it phases straight through his hands, and he is forced to watch in terror as he becomes the one thing he swore to destroy. Then he dies.
Her name started with T.
Yeah, but you fucking die in the African jungle. You don't win this, you know?
Death is as much of an escape as continued life would be.
What was he cooking with this?
I'll show you. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. See, I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve.
During the ad break between the two stories, we are treated to a full 20 seconds of disgusting drinking sounds that I will now play for you in full.
Okay, that was some good water.
It's not about money. It's about sending a message. Everything burns.
The next story is not just metaphorically, but literally a prison. A scenario in which you have no control, no agency, no ability to make your own decisions. This time, Anuhas is the player, at the whims of Arthur, and it plays out much the same. No matter what Anuhas tries to do, he cannot escape. He does not even have the strength to rail uselessly against his confines.
I start smashing the toilet with my bare hands, because fuck the toilet.
You're not strong enough.
Anuhas calls his only friend, his ex, of whom he is already convinced is an enemy due to the name starting with T, isolating himself from his only connection with the outside world due to his spiteful refusal to talk to them. Anuhas screams into the void. Nobody answers. The division of the lower class is so extreme that Anuhas blames his incarceration on his T-named significant other, despite them very clearly being innocent. There is more surreal horror as Anuhas loses his grip on reality, the lore of the dreams beginning to blend as Anuhas discusses the African jungle in his prison dream. Reality bends and melts like a candle wick, and Anuhas is burnt by the flame. He is filled with spite and rage. But then he is presented with what looks like an escape. A wizard magically appears, but Anuhas, blinded by his prejudices, beats him to death because his name starts with T.
No, stop it, I'm not invincible! Don't you want to get out of here? He says as you're like brutally beating him, like over and over again.
Luckily, another wizard appears, called Jonathan Wizard Jonathan, presumably right next to the beaten and battered corpse of his comrade, and promises Anuhas escape as long as he can answer his riddles 3. But if you've learned one thing about capitalism, it's that it's never that simple. The riddles are impossible, and Anuhas again resorts to violence, but this time he cannot hurt the wizard. Instead, he is forced to wait in painful tedium as Jonathan scrolls through the internet to find a good riddle, which are just trivia questions about animal facts.
Hold on. He keeps like looking at his phone, and you you get the feeling that he really didn't plan this out very well.
Jonathan, I swear, Jonathan, can't you just teleport me out of here? If I already answered your question, so like, can't you just teleport me out?
Hold on.
Jonathan, stop fucking scrolling through Reddit or whatever the fuck. Just get me out of here.
20 weird animal facts. Oh, this one looks interesting.
Jonathan,
He's not listening
listen.
to you.
Jonathan, listen to me.
Horses can turn their head that far, I guess.
Jonathan, I just like scream as loud as I
This
physically
site
can.
is very bad. I'm going to 300 random animal facts. This
No,
one looks
no
interesting.
more. No animals. Please. Please, Jonathan. Please, Jonathan. I can't do this
Now this
anymore.
one is good.
Jonathan, please. Jonathan, I can't. I start tearing my own hair out.
Anuhas's voice actor actually does a tremendous job at portraying the sheer anxious madness of the character, stuck in a concrete cell with an infuriating wizard for what feels like an eternity. Finally, after enduring this torture for what really does feel like an eternity, even listening to it.
Okay, Jonathan. False. Alligators can walk backwards, right?
Wrong! They cannot move
Jonathan! Jonathan! For fuck's sake, Jonathan, please, I want to see my wife back. Please. Get me out of here. Jonathan, don't do it!
You had your
Don't
chance.
go!
He flicks his fingers and disappears.
No, Jonathan! Jonathan! No!
So you remain trapped in your concrete cell for the rest of eternity. And
Anuhas's comment at the end pretty much sums up my thoughts exactly.
I felt like I was actually in a concrete cell listening to you play as Jonathan for so long.
I think you and I are destined to do this forever.
This Dinklecast was harrowing. It was a mind-numbing, bone-gnawing, hair-graying experience which sapped many years off my life. In this aspect, it is another brilliant allegory to capitalism. I'd like to thank the team behind Decrepit Dinklecasters for this Marxist classic, and for the tremendous improvement to my life they've done by creating this series. I don't know why I made this.